So what are we doing today?
Which video game villain could you not wait to kill?
Oh, okay, cool. That's quite a good one, actually. There's quite a few to choose from, actually, because the thing is, you actually get treated quite a lot as a villain working here at WhatCulture, what with the comments, or just in general, your staff members trying to kill... What? What? Frau Engel from Wolfenstein II. She's in number 1, and she's a big bad villain, but she gets tossed away by a giant mech, but then she returns with a vengeance in the second one, and is the most ruthless, catastrophically evil villain, potentially ever. I think video games sort of have like a problem making compelling villains, because you have to spread them out such a like tens of hours at the very least, mostly, which is hard to get you really invested in how evil they are. But she does it so well. Not only has she performed so brilliantly, and she has like the most villainous evil ticks when she's up close and personal, getting in BJ and the player's face, and really taunting you with how much power she has. She is, although she's like just one person in this massive Nazi regime, she feels so like emblematic of all of their power, and she just dicks you over throughout that game, especially in the early hours. You essentially start it by getting your mates like taken hostage, and then she just beheads the leader of the group who was in the first one. And not only does she behead her, she picks up the face and like sticks it in your face and starts rubbing it around, and then she starts berating her own child, and it's just monstrous and horrible. And then she dogs you throughout the entire game. At one point she beheads you on national television. There's this really horrible phallic moment as well where she shoots your friend in the face, and then she sticks the gun in your mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get out of my face, man. Like, I'm into some weird stuff, but that's even too far for me. When you finally catch up to her at the end, you get her when she is sort of, she doesn't have any of her entourage around her, and then she's just the single person. She's not this gigantic in the Nazi regime anymore. She's not surrounded by the mech. She's not surrounded by all this power. She's on a TV show, and you infiltrate it, and you just jab this goddamn axe right in her, like, I think it's her head, or you just keep going, and you just like wailing her straight down her face, and it's so gory and horrible and delicious, and it's sort of, it is justified in a way because she's horrible and a big old Nazi, but it's that as well as the personal investment you have in the game, which is good. I know Rich is going to mention something later on, but you have so many great villains in that game. You have actual horrible Hitler who's pissing all over the place, who you get to kill, and she's still far worse. And I don't know how they did it. And I think Wolfenstein 3 is really going to miss her. I hope she comes back as a giant mech.
I mean, she will.
Get in.
Well, I like a good lovable villain. My mind went immediately to Saren in Mass Effect, but that was more just trying to save him from himself. The one I'm going to go for, though, the timeless villain, is Legend of Zelda's timeless villain, just Ganondorf. And in particular, I want to highlight Breath of the Wild's version, because you go through so much in that game, just getting used to the control scheme and kind of like, there's not like a skill system, you're not unlocking new skills, but you're getting better as the hero of Hyrule the whole way through it. So when you eventually, because you can go to the castle whenever you want, you can try after the first 15 minutes if you want, and obviously there are speed runs around that, but if you take your time and you get really used to all the different abilities that you have, when you finally get to the castle at the end, you're so ready to just kind of try and save the kingdom and put an end to this big demonic dragon version of Ganon that's been hovering around the castle. And even after you have that massive fight, brilliant score backs it and everything, you finally take him down, he's pure evil, or like the history of Ganon in that world is just pure demonic evil. So he turns into Dark Beast Ganon, which is just this massive hulking bull thing, and then you're just you summon your horse, whichever one you've got at the time. Mine was Epona, and you just have this great epic fight with the music. Again, the score's just like lush and underneath everything, and they basically set it up, which is in Zelda tradition, to give you one final light arrow. You need to have one final shot to deliver the big victory shot, and the way that they do it in Breath of the Wild is that he has these big flame attacks that he's scorching the field with as you're riding around him and everything, and eventually he does that, and you have to kind of think of it yourself, like as is the case in that game. They don't spell out what you need to do, but if you've been paying attention for the last time you've been playing it, you'll know that flames create updrafts. So once you realize that his attack is actually his biggest weakness, because then it means you can leap off your horse, get your little paraglider, fly way up into the air. The whole game kicks into super slow motion as you line up that final shot and you take him out as the score does a crescendo. Possibly the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced, and I'm married. It's brilliant. So yeah, I would go with that. I think Ganon's one of the best villains of all time, and I think they did the best version of him in Breath of the Wild. Ting.
Right, so because I didn't get to talk about it last week as I was away, I'm going to talk about God of War, because one of my favourite villains, one of my favourite things that they've done with villains in recent games, and also just my favourite game at the moment, I love it so much, is Baldur, because he is done exceptionally well. Like, he's a whiny, snivelling, annoying piece of shit for most of the game, but in Norse mythology. Sorry, Jules.
So you just stared very intently as you listed up those character flaws.
But in Norse mythology, he's exactly the opposite. He's this wonderful, loving man who everyone adores. He's one of the nicest gods, and his death is a really important part of Ragnarok and everything, which obviously plays into God of War. So for him to be spun the opposite way was a really interesting way of playing him out, and also made me absolutely despise him, because he's such a knob. All he does is run around being like, "Whoa, I'm so tough, I can't feel anything. Come on, give us a hit, and then you just want to clobber his face in the whole time, because you're playing as Kratos, who's this obviously big, strong, pummeling man. The whole time I was just like, right, come here, I'm gonna knock your face in, come on. And every time I couldn't do it, so like, to be able to go through this game continually smashing this little twerp's face in and it not doing anything, to finally be able to snap his neck at the end was just, it was a release. It was a release. It was good. That was a fantastic game and a fantastic way of playing out this villain, because you do get to kind of feel sorry for him, but then you still realise he's got to die because he's been so twisted by all of this inability to feel the whole time. He just has to go. He has to go. He's been warped.
Another one of your problems solved by anger.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I play games.
Probably would have to be Andrew Ryan from Bioshock. Now, the moment that you arrive at Rapture and the big spiralling lighthouse that's in the middle of the ocean, you see his big visage looking down at you, cast in bronze, and it's basically just like, okay, that's a figure of great importance to this city. And I love Bioshock. It's one of my favourite games. And say it with me, Osley, of all time. There we go, my boy. And I read the book that came alongside it as well, which was like a precursor to how it was all set up. So you get to see Andrew Ryan as the figure that he was in before Rapture and its big descent, and you got to see him afterwards, where he's controlling the populace with pheromones. He's a very evil man in the sense that he wants to control so badly that he's willing to sacrifice the free will of the people that live there to do it. There is no redeeming quality of him at the beginning of Bioshock, but having read the book, you get to see that descent, that gradual and then sudden descent into his sort of insanity and insecurity. And all the way through the game, you are led to believe that he sees you as a parasite, and he thinks that you're here to kill him and do all this other stuff, and you're not really sure why he thinks that. So all the way through, you keep on wanting to find out more. You think to yourself, there's got to be something I hate about this man. Like, he's taunting me all the time through radio diaries, through announcements, and you just want to stick the final boot into his face. And when you finally meet him, and the rug pull that happens with the "would you kindly" twist, and you realise that you are actually a biologically engineered boy who has rapidly grown up to be an assassin to kill him, you realise that you are the bad guy to him. He was terrible for this city, and you're both not as good, you're both as bad as each other, which sets up the real villain of the game, Fontaine. Congratulations, Fontaine, you got a son. But still, Fontaine didn't create the amount of hatred that Andrew Ryan did, because Andrew Ryan was a constant and present threat in your ear and your eyes, basically telling you all the time that he was the big bad and that he was the downfall of Rapture. In his own words, he is Rapture, and look at the state it's in. So honestly, I couldn't wait to kill him, but once I had done, I realised, maybe he wasn't as bad as Fontaine is going to be for this city, but still, there are no good guys in this whatsoever. Fantastic villain, fantastically well written, and just a fantastic game overall.
So my one's a bit weird, because there's this game called Eco. It's basically a bit like Minecraft. When you first start the game, that you see the one villain, which is up in the sky, and that's a meteor, and you've got 30 days, real time, not game time, to defeat this meteor and just like blast it to smithereens, really. You have to defeat it by going through all the technologies, so like wood, rocks, and then going through like all the different ores and like iron ore and that sort of stuff. You just have to like survive, feed yourself by killing animals, planting crops, and eventually you build up to a laser, which is the main game, really. If you think about all the things that I've mentioned, like mine up all this ore, killing all these animals, you yourself are the villain itself, because when you're smelting all these ores, you're releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. You're killing all these animals and killing all their habitats and chopping down all this wood. You're destroying the earth, basically.
I'm a big fan of Osley Eco Warrior. Yeah, damn right.
If you're not careful, you yourself could be the villain, and that's even worse than the meteor like crashing down and killing everything. But at the end game, when you've got that perfect balance between surviving the meteor and also not destroying the planet, it's really, really good. Really satisfying and just great overall.
Nice.
It's a good balance, really.
Yeah.
I really, really love these entries where it's like, right, Rachel, what do you absolutely hate? And I'm like, but no, the villain I'm going to talk about this week is it's GLaDOS
Nice.
from one of my favorite games of all time, and that is Portal. Portal 2, obviously, I think is the better game, but GLaDOS isn't actually the villain in Portal 2. GLaDOS is kind of like, I know, I'm sorry for the spoilers. The 9-year-old game or something. So yeah, GLaDOS in particular in Portal 1. When you first get introduced to her, she is just this really monotoned kind of robotic voice that you kind of hear and you can see her on the camera, just watching you, forcing you to do all these tests, laughing when you fail, making fun of you, basically kind of trying to kill you, and you're sort of like, oh, I'm not really sure how I feel about you, but you do all the tests because the game is fun, and you're like, well, this is fun, I don't really mind. You kind of grow to love her. And it's a weird kind of love-hate relationship with GLaDOS all the way through Portal 1, until the end of the game when she goes, right, well done, you've done very well, and then literally like puts you on a little elevator that's going straight down to hell, like into a fire, and she's like, you've done well, on you go. So that's when it got personal, and that's when I was like, right, time to put this lassie down, time to stab her. And when you finally do get to kill GLaDOS, it's just so much fun because it is a puzzle game, so even the boss fight is a puzzle game. You have to set up portals in such a way that you get her to kill herself, which is beautiful and ironic, but it's just wonderful. And then of course when you play Portal 2 and she is in fact, you think she's coming back to life, you think she is going to be the villain, and you go, right, round 2, and then it ends up being Wheatley instead that you end up killing. It's just very, very cool. GLaDOS is an amazing character, my favourite villain of all time, and I suppose I couldn't wait to kill her, but I secretly I do love her. It's a love. It's a hate that I love, a love that I hate.
Almost like a love-hate thing.
Almost like love-hate, but definitely just love and no hate.
I have a unique example for this because I was going to mention Micah Bell from Red Dead Redemption 2 because literally the moment you get to just line up those dead-eye shots and go at the end is really, really cool and satisfying. But I'm going to talk about LA Noire instead, and that'll be an interesting pick for people because obviously LA Noire is set in 1947 after World War II. You play Cole Phelps, who develops into a bit of a bastard as the course of the game goes on. But probably my favourite, if you don't know, there are different desks in the game. So you start off as just a normal patrol cop, then you work up to, I think it's traffic, and then you get to homicide. Homicide is very interesting because this takes place during kind of the height of the Black Dahlia murder. You know, the entire LA is like completely just on its, just like freaking out because they've got this this killer on the loose who's done a very, very awful crime, literally just left a torso. It's really not nice at all. And basically you keep on investigating these different murders, and as you're going on, you're implicating different people in the crimes. Your captain's very much like, I don't care, just lock him up, I don't care, and blah, 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 blah. It's very LA Confidential in the way it's framed. And then you slowly begin to piece together that the killer is actually responsible. There's one killer responsible for everything, and you're fairly certain that it is the Black Dahlia murderer in himself. And he starts leaving clues for you at different crime scenes. It's really, really unsettling and creepy, and it's the kind of stuff that gets under my skin. I never really care about supernatural, scary stuff, but actual real life people being really awful really gets under my skin. So the fact he knows that you're searching for him is this really awful game of cat and mouse is terrifying. And then you find out where he is at the end. And oh my God, it is horrifying. It's one of the most best paced missions that I've ever played in a game. And you find his house, you're going through, investigating all these different crime scenes. You see this bathtub that's just been drained with all the blood, and you find these different things, and you're just there like, that's a bit scary. And then you're there with your flashlight, and then you hear him, and you get to the church, and oh God, he's there. He's there with the gun, and then you chase him into the sewers. And then I finally chased him out into the back garden and killed him, and I was just there like, it's done, Sam. It's done.
Josh has already precursored this. He mentioned my lovely name while he was talking about Wolfenstein 2, because I'm also going to talk about Wolfenstein 2, but I'm not going to talk about a Nazi. because the Nazi's obviously the main villain in the whole game. Nazis are bad, end of story, let's face it. But there's one character in Wolfenstein 2 that I, in the space of one game, wanted to kill more so than Frau Engel in the space of 2 games. And that's BJ's dad. The game has flashbacks, be it I think while he's like sedated or he's dying, and then again when he goes back and visits his homestead for when he was a kid and how abusive his dad was. He had a Jewish mother who he was abusive to as well. And he ended up becoming friends with a black girl who lived just around the corner. And his very, very racist, also very homophobic dad didn't want him to be spending any time with this girl, as this racist dad would back in the 1910s, 1920s when he was a kid. And he would beat his son for it. And he takes him down into the basement and he puts his dog in front of him, ties his hands to a chair, hands him a shotgun and says, right, you know, you need to be a man. Shoot the dog.
It's horrible.
It is absolutely disgraceful, and this is only step 1 of this dad character. I don't know what you did, but did you shoot the dog?
No, of course
no,
not.
I didn't shoot it either. You can move the reticle away and miss the dog, and you fall backwards because you're still tied to this table, and then the father takes the gun anyway and shoots it anyway. So you do lose your dog, end of story. So that's bad enough. Flash forward to the 1960s, in the events of Wolfenstein 2, you're playing as adult BJ. And he goes back to his homestead and his dad is actually there. He's throwing out all this stuff about how you're a failure to my name and all this sort of thing, and you know, BJ's there like, I was scared of you at one point, now you're just a weak old man, piss off. And then his dad drops the big bombshell, which is that when this new government came in after the war, i.e. the Nazis, things got a lot better.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And he's like, my business boomed, all this thing. I own a 1,000-acre thing up there, you know, up north somewhere. And it's like, okay, this is all good. And then BJ asks, where's Mum? Where is she? And it is obviously described earlier on that she is also a Jew. Put 2 and 2 together. His dad sells her out to the Nazis, at which point, when he realizes that the dad's like, well, you know, you're a failure to me as well. You're a murderer, because he's on the Nazi side, and at this point in the canon, BJ's being shown off as Terror Billy, as he's a Nazi murderer. You should all be afraid of him. And his dad's like, well, you're a murderer of my people because he's basically a Nazi now. All good. Goes in for the kill to try and kill BJ, and BJ slices off his dad's arm, pins him to the ground, and stabs him in the chest with his hatchet. And leaves him to die slowly. Unfortunately, he'd also rang up Frau Engel and she'd overheard the whole conversation they just had. But, you know, even as Josh said, splitting Frau Engel's face in half with a hatchet at the end of the game was great, but it was nothing on killing this abusive, racist, sexist, homophobic father figure who was not a father to BJ in any capacity. And it's incredible to think, even just watching back the cutscenes, he's in the game for 20 minutes overall. I'd never felt my blood boil more seeing him again than I would seeing Frau Engel again. And he was the best kill in any video game ever because of what he did. But also, he's also amazing because of how he managed to shape this incredibly deep character in BJ Blazkowicz. So, BJ's dad, get in the bin.
Benji, thank you for joining us. What is your video game villain that you
Hitler.
know?
It's Hitler.